And after, sometime later then would have been the summer of 36, the next, the next year.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that summer?
Well,
About the weather?
the what?
The weather?
Well, it was dry. Terribly, terribly dry and hot. And the Monaghan's field of barley, well, it was so hot upstairs that we couldn't think of sleeping. So the sun porch had just been finished, and windows all around, and that was the best place to sleep. So we took cots and couches and everything, and the baby bed out there, and by 4 o'clock in the morning you had to be out because the sun was up. But about midnight, wake up in the night and you could smell the field of barley boiling in the field, just as much as if you had a pot of grain on the stove cooking. That's just what it smelled like. It was that hot. But we had some good rest anyway. That was it.
The whole summer.
Well, quite a bit of it, quite a bit of it. That's right.
Okay, and then I was born in 39, 3 years later.
That's right.
Anything special about that?
About the weather?
No,
about your birth?
You planned?
Well, of course, I planned on you being home, and me too. And well, it was a Monday morning. No, that was Gibbons. I don't remember there was something going on at Wayside, a show or something. So, in the afternoon, oh yeah, no, my mother came out. I don't know whether Dad was there too. Dad might have been helping, doing something in the barn. And Mother came out with Josephine Runnell Rodemaker, brought her out. She was going to visit her folks. And Mother came with her. And she stayed then for several days after Mary was born. But that evening, Daddy had to go over. Jimmy Daly had been in an accident. And Daddy went over to see how he was. Well, I can remember about 9:30 or so in the evening. Oh, well, Mother got all excited. She was that kind. And it's called, and then he came home. And so that was you. And Jerry, Jack, well, I guess I can't remember too much about their birth. Billy's was more exciting, I guess, but we had Dr. Walkirk had a nurse that came with him, and then she stayed the rest of the night.
This was when Billy was,
you were born.
or when I was
when you
born.
were born. Yeah, and she stayed the rest of the night. And then I can remember Mother giving her breakfast, and then she went back to work. So that, and then, well...
Well, tell about when Billy was born.
Oh, when Billy was born, that was quite interesting. It was Labor Day, and boys, Jack and Jerry, had this old truck that Daddy said they could run wherever they wanted in the field. The freshly cut grass was all cut and off the ground, and so they could use the field for a racetrack, or well, not race, but try out there.
So how old were they?
Well,
Jack and Jerry, about 11, 12?
Yeah, something like that. And they had the old truck. This was when Billy was born. Yeah, 13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a little bit old. Well, so they got all the kids from Wayside, Grace Siebert and all the little kids from Wayside to ride in the truck. I was hanging out clothes, and they were determined that I was going to take a ride around the field. good exercise for me. But I didn't go. And that was that day until evening, and then there was a show or something going on in Wayside. And they went down to Brennan's. Of course, Jerry, when he'd go down to Brennan's, if it was a Sunday or whenever, if there were funnies, he was set for the day, read the funnies. And so when Daddy called the doctor, and he wasn't home, Mrs. Brandt was in the office taking care of the calls. They had gone to Rosina's parents in Algoma for the day.
That was Dr. Cochran.
Dr. Cochran with their young son. And so then she must have called Algoma, and then I don't remember whether I called Mrs. Brennan to keep the boys, if she would, and Florence and her friend Chris were there visiting. So they came up, and I had all the help I needed. And Dr. Cochran barely got into the house before you arrived.
No.
Or before Billy arrived. And that was that day. Then, well, of course, Jerry came home and Jack came home. Jerry fasting. I think the basket was on the dining room table with Billy in it. And he said, "Gosh, this is getting to be a habit around here." This is getting to be a habit.
You thought so too.
Yeah, I thought so too. 2 years and a little bit apart.
Okay, so then the following spring, your mother died.
Yes. Billy was 6 months old.
So why don't you tell that story?
Well, when Mother died, yes. Oh dear, Daddy had surgery, hernia surgery. He was in bed, and Billy was just that 6 months old, and well, who else was at the house? There wasn't anyone, I guess, to take care of anyone but me and the boys. We had to do the work outside as well as inside. And so I got a call that Mother had had a stroke. It was about almost 10 o'clock at night. And then I thought, well, who am I going to call? I called Gordon Brennan's, and Gordon was coming to take me in. Well, then Clara Martin heard, and she called Brennan's for Gordon to bring me up to their place, and John and Clara, took me to town, to the pier. And Mother was unconscious, of course, but she was still breathing.
Well, tell how that happened with your mother. What?
Oh, well, before that, the Sunday before, of course, Aunt Cal Hobbins always spent Sunday with us, or with my folks. And on the way home from Vespers in the afternoon, my mother said to Aunt Cal on the walk home, she said, "You know, Dad isn't feeling too well. I don't know, I'm getting tired." And she didn't think she could take it much longer. Well, the next day, in the evening, she got a stroke. And that was it.
But you said that she was saying her prayers.
Yeah, kneeling by the bed, yes. Well, every evening, before they'd go to bed, they got in the habit of eating half a grapefruit apiece. Slice a grapefruit in two, and they'd each have half. Well, Dad would go to bed, and when he'd go to bed, he'd go to sleep, quick, like that. And Mother never did. And Mother was kneeling by the bed, saying her prayers. Well, Dad noticed that she she must have been sleeping. She often did go to sleep saying her prayers. And I suppose he took a little extra nap and woke up and she was still there. And then he found out she had a stroke. And then he didn't have a telephone in the house at that time and called the neighbor, which lived, well, just a stone's throw from the house. And, well, then she did the calling and called the priest and the doctor
And you.
and me.
So then you got there later.
Got there before she died.
Uh-huh.
No, got there before she died. I would say a matter of maybe 20 minutes. But
Yeah, I remember her funeral.
Well, I know, and you cried your eyes out. Owen Monaghan, the people that, you know, that you loved to be with, wanted to take you home from the cemetery instead of me taking you back to the pier. But no, you wouldn't leave. You just hung on. So I had to take you back to the pier.